Hi, this is Andrew Groh with the Missouri Society of CPAs. This is MOCPA Bar Talk, where we talk about the latest trends, news, and issues that matter to you the most. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, Andrew Groh here, and we're here today with another episode of MOCPA Bar Talk. Today we're going to be talking with experts Karla Sohre and Diane Andrea with Marsh McLennan Agency. And an interesting topic, we're going to be talking about stress and self-care, health and well-being, a really hot topic right now, not just in our profession, but kind of nationally. Diane and Karla, welcome. Do you real quick, do you want to share a little bit about yourself and your history and your firm?
Sure, I'll go ahead. Thanks for having me. I'm Diane Andrea. I'm the health management consultant with MMA in St. Louis. So for the Missouri folks, hi. My role is to help our clients, which are employee health and benefits clients, with different wellness initiatives and strategies at the workplace.
Hi.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Diane. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I've been doing it for a while. We talked about it, how long I've been doing this. So for quite a while, over 20 years working with employee health.
And I'm Karla Sohre, and I am also a health management consultant, but I am actually out of our Minneapolis office. And I work closely with Diane as well. We get to partner on projects like this. I've also been in the industry for over 20 years. I've done a lot of work working with employers and helping them devise their well-being strategy. And I do a lot of work around mental health. Both Diane and I are actually mental health first aid instructors. So it's definitely a passion that we have. And so we're very excited to be a part of this conversation today.
That's great. Thank you both so much for being here. And I know we chatted a little bit before this conversation around, maybe some CPA clients that you all have, and this conversation being, almost an annual type of conversation right before busy season. Where are we kind of right now for viewers and for listeners who are listening to this podcast? We're still in the middle, I think, of a pandemic, COVID-19. So maybe if I could ask a little bit about your thoughts on what you and your firm and your clients are talking about right now during this pandemic that may be a little bit different than maybe some of the historical or annual types of conversations you're having in this space.
I can take that. I'll start. One of the things that I'm having a conversation with, which I'm just thrilled about, is on mental health at the workplace. It seems to have really opened up the doors for employers because they're understanding that this can be very tough on a lot of employees. So opening up that conversation, I see that a lot with our clients today.
Yeah, and I would just echo what Diane mentioned. Mental health has definitely come to the forefront. And so many of our clients were already talking about mental health, but this has really been a stimulus to get them to even start putting things into action when it comes to mental health. And I think it's just really around the uncertainty. A lot of our employer groups just don't know, what the future holds when it comes to COVID and what the new normal will look like. So it's definitely a topic top of mind in all of our clients.
Yeah, and maybe a quick follow-up question there. A lot of things because of COVID-19, at least in the accounting profession, the word we like to use is accelerated. Have you seen these conversations? Have you seen your clients and heard your clients been asking in an accelerated pace? Is this conversation topic riding along with other types of issues that maybe aren't discussed enough and we really should be?
I do think it has accelerated. I love to see different vendors and other resources kind of open up their resources to all of our employers and all of their employees. So I see a lot of that. I do think that employers, like to Karla's point, are finally looking at actionable ways that they're going to assist their employees.
Yeah, that's great. I know we're going to talk a little bit about some of those things here today. You came in and gave an awesome presentation for a lot of our members a few weeks back, and it was so powerful that we knew that we had to have you come back in and talk a little bit more about this topic on the podcast. So thanks so much. So let's get into it. Some of the core kind of topics that you all are talking with your clients and about during this time. The first one being, I think, self-care. kind of with the stress of the pandemic that we're all in right now, it is more important to look at ourselves and maybe look inwardly. So let's talk a little bit about self-care. What are you all seeing? What are you all talking about in this space?
Yeah, so we're really talking about informing employees to really make sure that they're taking time for self-care. And so what self-care is it's just really the practice and the action of taking care of your own mental and physical health. You know, if you think about, and really we think about thinking about that airplane analogy, when you were always told to put your oxygen mask on first before assisting those around you, it's really the same concept here. You know, it's really making sure that you take the time to care for others, or to care for yourself so that you have that energy and fuel in your tank when it comes to time to help in others or to do the job tasks that you need to do at work, to support your family, do the things you need to do around the house. And I think, as you know, we just talked about COVID, and it becomes more and more important really to think about that self-care, because we are experiencing so many changes. There's so much uncertainty around us right now, and all that stress that's really being created by COVID, it makes it even more important for us to really take that time to fuel our tank and find those things that can help give us energy through self-care. And so I think I might even just turn it over to Diane just to talk a little bit about some ideas and techniques for how you can support yourself through self-care.
Yeah, sure. And that's a great point. And again, you want to think of yourself as making sure that you're listening to what you need. So one thing about self-care, it's different for all of us, but there's definitely certain things that we can do. So Karla mentioned the physical. So making sure that we're fueling our bodies appropriately. So we're getting the right nutrition. You know, fruits and vegetables, water, all of that good stuff, so that we have the energy that we need to be able to move forward, to have the energy we need, to be able to handle those stressors in our lives. So that's so important. Physical activity. And, you know, it might not necessarily look the same as it did pre the pandemic. Maybe you were going to a gym, and it might be a little different now, but the important part is that we're moving our body physically. So we're getting up maybe several times during the day, whatever that may look like. I think it was so interesting to me, and I loved it, is that, you know, I would be working when we started working from home, and at lunchtime I'd see all these people out and walking their dogs, and neighbors maybe I normally don't see outside. So I think people understood that, wow, I feel like I'm inside all day long. If I'm working from home, I have to get out. So I love that people were taking care of themselves like that. We'll talk about sleep in just a little bit, but very, very important for self-care. And then making sure that we're connecting with those social relationships that we have, colleagues and friends and family, and however it works for you. You know, do they like to text or Skype or FaceTime or whatever that may be? We have like Skype for Business. So I try to reach out at least to one colleague every day or every other day and just say, hey, how are you doing, right? Fridays are a great time for that. So, you know, any fun plans for the weekend? So it's just, again, reminding them that we are still all connected together. And then other things for our emotional well-being, right? So we're unplugging, we're making sure that we're experiencing nature, maybe going for that walk, that we're turning off screens. Sometimes we have to set boundaries. I think that's important too for self-care. A long time ago, I really just stopped watching evening news, for an example. So I just felt like it would be distressing to me. There was a lot of negativity on it. And so it wasn't really helping my sleep. So I decided to set that boundary for my nighttime routine. And you might need to find some boundaries with the 24/7 news cycle and social media and all of that. So that's really a good way to take care of yourself by doing that. And then how can we we can take care of ourselves by reaching out of ourselves, if that kind of makes sense, right? Helping our community, finding ways maybe to be a mentor, maybe helping those who are just developing in their CPA skills or whatever it might be. Can we reach out to those individuals and work outside of ourselves so that you end up taking care of yourself that way too.
And how often should we be doing these things? And maybe even, you know, is it different now than, you know, your advice different now than it would have been 6 months ago? What is a good kind of mix or regimen or a way to think about, you know, how much physical exercise should I be getting? Should I always be, you know, kind of mindful of my fruits and veggies going in, those types of things? Where are we right now with advice on that?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So ideally, we generally tell employees to practice something every day with self-care. It's hard because a lot of times we get really busy throughout the day, and particularly as we start to see people who are working from home. So they're at their desk, and there's no commute anymore. They eat at their desk, finding it harder and harder to take those breaks as they're working from home. So it's really important, even if you can just pause a little bit throughout the day, to disconnect from your work and go out and maybe take a walk, get some physical activity in, maybe take a quick stretch break. Any of that you can do throughout the day is really, really important. We know that life gets busy, right? But just finding that time to pause and make sure that you're taking care of yourself is really important. And sometimes it's really when at those busy times, when you think that you don't have the time, that's the time when those stress levels tend to be higher. You tend to start feeling maybe a little more fatigue, a little bit more burnout. And those are really the times that it's really important to take that time and pause, because when you come back, you're gonna be more productive, you're gonna have more energy. And again, you're just really filling that tank again, and you're ready to go and do more. So ideally every day if you can.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I'm sure these conversations are maybe different with different groups and clients that you work with, just slightly. For CPAs and for other, I think, client service centric professions, we love to take care of other people. We love to say clients first, right? We spend a lot of time, energy, and effort, wanting to be the best professionals that we can be, and CPAs, the best CPAs they can be for their clients. What I'm hearing here is please, please, please take care of yourself first, especially maybe even during these times.
Absolutely. If you can take care of yourself, you're just going to have more energy to dedicate to your customers, and you're going to be a better CPA because you do take care of yourself.
That's great. So, so maybe real quick, one example. What is something that maybe from a self-care kind of perspective, something that I could do, I could take away from this podcast or this conversation, and maybe do something every day to move from maybe taking care of working out, or maybe grooming my beard or something like that, to something more of a mental, kind of health and well-being. What's a good maybe example of something that I could do there?
Yeah, so I think, Diane alluded to this actually when she talked about mindfulness. So even just practicing mindfulness is a good way to practice self-care. And so what mindfulness is it's really just a technique that you use to bring focus to to the present moment, really. So when you're being mindful, you're really tuned into any thoughts and feelings that you're experiencing. You're being fully aware of your surroundings at that present moment. And so there's a lot of research to show that mindfulness can actually change your neural pathways in your brain. So it can actually change your brain, which is pretty cool. So for example, if you start to focus on a lot of negative things, you're kind of training your brain really to think negatively and see those negative things. But on the other side, if you start focusing on those positive things, you can actually train your brain to focus on positive things, which is really important when we start talking about resiliency. And so we can use mindfulness to really be intentional about what we're focusing on and bringing our attention to those positive things. So that's one thing we can do. The other benefits of mindfulness, again, is it is helping us to really draw attention to those thoughts and feelings that we're having. So we talked about COVID, and we're talking about the stresses that people are going through. Sometimes those emotions that we're feeling may not always be positive. There could be some negative emotions, and that's okay. Once we are able to really think about how we are feeling and recognizing those, then it really helps us make that conscious choice about how we want to deal with those thoughts and feelings. So if it's a negative thought, we can then maybe reframe that to something positive. And instead of letting those negative emotions spin out of control, we have that power then through that mindfulness, recognizing those feelings, to turn them into something positive. Other things that mindfulness does, they can obviously help with stress and anxiety. They can help lower blood pressure. You can actually help improve some sleep, which is a great self-care tool as well, having good sleep. Help improve your social connections, which are extremely important, particularly now when we're feeling very isolated with COVID. And so all those things are really important for us when we start talking about resiliency.
Yeah, that's great. And if I'm taking away, kind of recentering myself and trying to make sure that I'm thinking and understanding, boy, I've got all of these maybe stressful thoughts and feelings. How can I help myself? How can I help others? What are some things that I could do, or maybe that others could do to both self-care, and maybe for others, some tips or some action items that we could use to help maybe recenter ourselves for positivity.
Well, kind of going off what Karla was just talking about on mindfulness, mindfulness can happen anywhere. So let's say you are taking a walk for morning. Mindfulness is just being there and really soaking in everything that you're part of your walk. So I like to, when I walk, I'm thinking about how does the ground feel underneath my feet? What do I see? How observant am I? Personally, I'm usually not that observant. So I really take some time to really look at different colors or what someone did, a flower, whatever it may be. So really being observant. I'm observing the smells, right? So right now we're in the summertime, there's lots of flowers, so I can smell things. I love just observing all of the sounds that I hear, right? Everything from nature, sounds of nature, etc. So that can really, part of that mindfulness and part of bringing you to right where you are is really just absorbing and making sure we're using all our senses and figuring out where we are in that moment. I think a lot of other things that people will do in regards to mindfulness is meditation. So meditation is a form of mindfulness, right? But Merriam-Webster defines meditation as engaging in contemplation or reflection. So I think when we hear meditation, we think that we have to be in the middle of the floor. We have to sit with our legs crossed and our eyes closed and our hands ready to do meditation. And that works for some people wonderfully. They love that. But don't forget that being contemplative, being reflective can occur just like we said, Andrew, and just, taking that walk that day, taking that pause throughout the day, getting up and stretching. We actually do a meditation every Monday at MMA St. Louis. And all I do is I just went onto YouTube and I looked at guided meditation. So if someone's new to meditation, a guided meditation is great because they're just kind of guiding you along. How should I be breathing when I'm here? Is it okay the way I'm sitting? What do I do when all these thoughts start to come into my head and I don't know how to arrange them? So it really helps, and those guided meditations can really help out. We do a 10-minute meditation every Monday morning. It's just a great way to start the practice for individuals, especially if they're new to meditation, to kind of get into that, how that feels. And then the more you do it, the more comfortable then you become as well with that, with meditation. I also thought this was great, and Karla, you'll laugh at this, but Dalai Lama said that sleep is the best meditation. Right. So, I mean, we all, that sounds great. If I can get my good sleep in, that's a form of meditation because I'm being reflective, I'm being contemplative at that point too. So definitely, do it as often as you need, like Karla said, right?
We have to get into this sleep conversation because honestly, I am having a very, very hard time with my whatever circadian rhythm, my internal clock. I'm up at 3 a.m., I'm to bed at 7 and vice versa. But I did want to ask real quick and maybe the link between kind of mindfulness and self-care. Is it challenging? Like a lot of professionals right now, I know are maybe at home, maybe at their home office for sometimes longer periods of time than we all were even 6 months ago. What's the link there between making sure that you do get yourself out and moving and into the grass that you love to walk through and walking around and then the mindfulness that comes along with that? Where's that link?
So I think it's kind of how when Karla was explaining it about helping us in managing our stress, getting our bodies in kind of ready, the energy that we need to make it through the day, that we're nourishing our bodies. And mindfulness is just kind of being in that present moment, right? So it's so easy to drift off and think about the what ifs. Like Karla said, things are so uncertain today. And I can spend a lot of my time and energy there, but that's what I'm doing, is I'm spending my precious time and my precious energy there. So I really want to be able to, hone in, to be able to be mindful, just be today, be here, be now today. It's going to be helpful for me and my self-care and my family and those around me too.
Yeah, that's great. And you know, I'm going to take all these tips and I'm going to go home and I'm going to talk to my kids about it and say, kids, it's time for dad to go and be mindful for a little bit. We all try to take our own kind of, you know, time, stuff like that. For me, it's running. And I'm not sure if that falls into being mindful, but some of the most creative, best kind of self-reflection that I tend to work through is through working out. And I hope that's okay too, in one of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Yep, absolutely. I think that working out, again, you're probably being very reflective. Sometimes don't you feel like you do your best problem solving when you're working out? It's like, I got all the world's problems figured out just from my last run. Yeah.
Absolutely. Just capturing all those great ideas right afterwards can be challenging, you know, after a shower and you've forgotten all the great stuff, but fantastic. But we did want to go and this, I've got my notebook ready to take all kinds of notes on sleep and why it's so important. Maybe to transition, what's the linkage between, you know, kind of, you know, self-care, mindfulness, and then sleep? How does that all kind of work together?
Yeah, so Karla, I'll kind of start here. I'll let you come in, but I think one of the things about sleep is that it's as important as diet and exercise. So we talked about mindfulness sleep is definitely helping us with mindfulness. It's part of self-care. So sleep is extremely important. So just like if, you know, you might, you know, talk about what you had for dinner last night and how you're trying to eat more fruits and vegetables and be healthy, but probably we aren't talking about, and I got my 8 hours of sleep last night, you know, anything like that, but maybe it should be part of that conversation, right? Because it is as important. So it's affecting our mental health, sleep is affecting our physical health and well-being, affects our safety, right? We know that in children and teens, it's going to help them support their growth and development. So it's so important. Karla talked about those, you know, our brain chemistry. It's helping our brain chemistry as well. That's when we solve problems and we're able to solve better problems. That's when we're laying down memories. We're able to process the information and enhance our learning. So if you've been, you know, working on a problem, CPA, whatever you're doing, and then, you know, sometimes it's easy to keep going and going, but maybe stopping, setting that boundary, going to bed, and being able to process the information of what you learned so that in the morning you can see things maybe a little bit clearer. So sleep is really important. It's where how our body heals herself during sleep, repairs itself, helps our immune systems, and it really just helps to foster that emotional resilience that Karla was talking about too. And then if we look at the opposite, sleep deprivation, right? So it's altering parts of our brain as well. So it puts us into those negativity thoughts. You know, we can dwell more on negativity. Sleep deprivation often causes poor decision making. It's more difficult to do problem solving, mood swings, those types of things. It also affects us physically, and that sleep deprivation is a risk factor for things like diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, stroke. So we really want to make sure that we are getting our adequate sleep.
Yeah, and that's great. So if I'm Andrew, which I am right now, and not getting good sleep, why? What is keeping me up at night? And maybe there's a list of a million different things, but maybe share a little bit about some of those factors and those types of things.
Yeah, you hit it. I mean, it's a ton of different things that can affect an individual's sleep. So it could be everything from illness. So even things like heartburn, or you have a bad cold, or allergies, right? Hormonal changes can affect our sleep. What we put into our bodies before we go to bed. So caffeine, alcohol, a large meal can affect it. Think of our environment in our sleep, in our bedrooms. If there's noise, if there's too much light, if it's too hot, too cold, if we have pets in our room, that affects our sleep. Chronic pain, medications, chronic illnesses can affect our sleep. And also think about our snoring partners, our mattress, our pillow, right? So a lot of things are affecting our sleep quality.
Yeah, that's all interesting. And if I'm looking at trying to change those maybe bad habits, snacking late at night, guilty as charged. What does a really great, healthy sleep pattern kind of look and feel like? And what are those conversations that you all are having with your clients on that front?
Yeah, so when we talk about sleep patterns, you know, really we look at both the amount of hours of sleep you get at night and the quality. So I think Diane alluded to that there's like quality of sleep as well. So the National Sleep Foundation recommends that adults should typically receive between 7 and 9 hours of sleep every night. Certainly, we also want to have that good quality restorative sleep as well. And so when we think about sleep, you really go through sleep cycles. And so each sleep cycle is comprised of different stages. You have stages of non-REM sleep, and then you have your REM sleep. And REM really stands for rapid eye movement. And so it's really when you get into those third and fourth stages of the cycle that you start to get that restorative sleep. And so for individuals who may struggle to sleep, stay asleep, maybe they have sleep apnea or they have any type of sleep disorders, that lack of getting into those third and fourth stages of your sleep and getting into that deep sleep can really be problematic when it comes to that cognitive functioning, so your memory, your learning, and all those things that Diane talked about in terms of the health effects. So it's important to make sure that if you're struggling with sleep to get that checked out and make sure that there might not be something underlying that could be an issue with your sleep. Signs of poor sleep could be things like not feeling rested when you wake up in the morning. It could be that you wake up a lot frequently throughout the night. Maybe you have some gasping for air or snoring. You know, in those cases, you might want to, again, check it out and make sure there's not something going on that could be impacting your sleep quality. So one of the things to, it's obviously going to vary from person to person. So even though there's a recommendation from 7 to 9 hours of sleep, each individual is different. You may all have different activity levels. Andrew, you talked about running, and if you're active, you might need more sleep than somebody who is not as active. You might have different health factors that come into play. Somebody who's more healthy may not need quite as much sleep as somebody who may be struggling with an illness that might need some more sleep. So just an activity that you can try just to kind of help you determine, well, what is my sleep pattern? Like, how much sleep do I really need? This is usually a good thing to do if you have some extended periods of time where you maybe have a vacation, where you don't have anything that you have to get up for at a particular time. But if you have a good week and a half where you can just allow yourself to sleep and wake up with an alarm, do that for a period of time and you'll start to see what your consistent amount of hours of sleep may look like. And then you should be waking up naturally without an alarm clock. And so when you do that, that gives you an idea about how many hours of sleep do I really need? Is it 7? Is it 8? And you should also be obviously waking up well rested and feeling like you have energy to go throughout the day. So that's one little tip you can try just to figure out what your pattern might look like.
Yeah, that's great. And what else what other kind of tips or tricks could I try to help my kind of sleep cycles or schedules? It sounds to me like I was writing down here, maybe I need to pay closer attention even to, maybe on a daily or weekly basis, how I'm feeling before I go to bed, after I go to, after I wake up. And just as of late, I've been sleeping on the couch some nights, in the guest room, like where I'm even sleeping has been kind of all over the map, which is weird. But what are some things that I could be, or we could all be doing to help on that front?
Yeah, I can kind of talk about some of those, we call it kind of sleep hygiene issues that we can kind of think about before we go to bed. And really what we need to do is definitely is think about before bedtime. So there's lots of things you can do in preparation for your sleep time. So look at about, 30 minutes to an hour beforehand. If there's a time maybe you can cut off screens, right? So we've heard about blue light and affecting our sleep because it kind of makes our brain think this is daytime, yay. So, trying to cut off our screens at that time. Maybe whatever you do to relax yourself. So maybe taking a warm shower or getting a cup of herbal tea, maybe starting to turn the lights down low. So you're doing this all, it sounds weird, but you're like preparing to sleep, right? It's like, woohoo. But you're thinking about that ahead of time, because a lot of times what happens is you're working away maybe, Andrew, or you just did your run and now it's like, 10 at night and you have to go to bed. Well, sleep is going to suffer and it's not going to be as best of quality as it could be. A couple other things to remember is watching those stimulants before bedtime. So things like nicotine and caffeine, alcohol too. A lot of times alcohol will help some people fall asleep, but then they wake up and aren't able to go back to sleep. Exercise is great. In fact, exercise during the day is going to help you get a better and deeper sleep at night. You just want to be careful. Like I said, you don't want to run at 10 o'clock at night and then go to bed right away. So avoiding that vigorous activity right before bedtime. Take care of your diet. Again, a large meal, or especially if you suffer from heartburn or have heartburn, you don't want to have something that's going to cause that to start acting up while you're sleeping. Adequate exposure to daylight is also helpful for sleeping at night, which is kind of interesting, but it definitely helps us get into that sleep mode that Karla was kind of talking about. Establishing that bedtime. So if you did, like Karla mentioned, and you figured out how much you would need to sleep, that you kind of keep that consistent. I know a lot of times on the weekends we're thinking, yeah, I get to sleep in, but maybe by a half hour, not too much more, because it's just going to kind of throw you off. And then, we wonder why Monday morning we were so groggy. It might have been because, we weren't taking care of that. And then the other couple of things are just, again, we talked about your environment, your sleep environment. Some people like to sleep with maybe a noise machine or a fan. You could put shades on those little eye shades over your eyes if it's too light in your room. Try to keep your phones, etc., out of the room if you can. And I understand that people might need it for emergencies, but maybe put it in a bathroom or someplace else where you can get at it easier. But those would just be some good tips. So again, thinking about it ahead of time, making sure everything is set up, and you're in a good position when you start your sleep.
That's fantastic. And again, taking notes, some things I'm going to try at home, and maybe maybe my wife won't kick me as much in the middle of the night with my restless sleep as it has been of late because of some of these great new tips. Thank you so much. We've spoken quite a bit, during this show today about, being self-mindful and self-care, and that's where everything starts, right? What if I'm an owner or an executive or a partner at a CPA firm, and I'm listening to this podcast, consulting with you all on some of these things. What am I thinking about for not just for myself, but for my staff, for my company? What are some considerations that, maybe we could take away to say, not just how can individuals implement and think about and take some action items away from being healthy, but what can firms and companies and businesses do to help their employees?
Yeah, so I think this is really when we start talking about the culture. And as leaders of companies, we really want to focus on our employee mental health by building a culture of work that really supports the caring, well-being environment. And so generally, this is really focusing on how do we focus on our people and the relationships within our organizations. Sometimes we get really busy, and I think, Andrew, you mentioned this too, that we want to be really good at servicing our clients. And sometimes we forget that the people servicing our clients are employees. And so we want to make sure that as leaders that we do take time to make sure that our employees know that they are valued and cared for, and that we do value their well-being, we do value their mental health. So it's really important to do that, because when we do, that's when they tend to be more engaged, they tend to be more invested in their work, and then they tend to also be better stewards of your organization, and they tend to service their clients better. So from a mental health perspective, this can be simply doing things like providing resources to support well-being. So it could be mindfulness that we talked about, promotion of mindfulness. Maybe there are some apps or some tools that you can share with them. Diane mentioned that at MMA, we do some mindfulness. Could you have moments of mindfulness throughout the day as well, encouraging employees to do that? There are a lot of digital mental health tools out there. When we talk about mindfulness, if you go out onto your Google Play Store, your Apple Store, you'll find that there's a lot of apps that support mindfulness. So Headspace, for example, Calm, some of those tools, being able to promote those and encouraging your employees to take time for that is really important. And if you have an EAP, certainly making sure that you're taking time to promote those tools and resources available through those as well from a counseling standpoint. Other things is just simply encouraging positivity, so taking time to express gratitude. It's always important as leaders to make sure that you take time to pause and recognize the good thing that your employees are doing. And sometimes just that positivity and that gratitude can go a long way for helping somebody's mental health and helping them engage more at work. Other things we always want to encourage, again, fostering those positive relationships. So I think we've talked a lot today about how COVID is really having that impact on making people feel maybe a little isolated. You're not in the office working together. So sometimes it's harder just to stay connected. So it's really more important than ever to make sure if you're having team meetings, just to take some time at the beginning to pause and ask how people are doing. Like truly ask, how are things going? It's not just about what are the work tasks that have to get done, but how are they doing managing those work tasks? How are they doing managing home life with work life? Because now they're at home and potentially, they've got children at home that they're, managing too. So it's really just taking that time and making sure that, everybody's feeling connected to to the team and to you as well. And then just creating that culture of listening. And I think that comes back again to making sure that individuals feel like their voices are heard. If they're struggling to maybe hit certain tasks, take time to listen, find out what they need, how you can support them, and just make sure that they're okay throughout this. And I think then again, just going back to that COVID piece, that flexibility and redefining what work expectations look like. So again, if you have individuals who are managing multiple priorities at home, they're managing work, they're managing helping to educate their kids through school because it maybe isn't in session, taking care of kids. It's like, how do we make sure that we can be flexible to meet our employees' needs while still getting the work done that needs to get done? So I think just that flexibility is really key in helping support as well.
Yeah, and if I could ask a follow-up question on that one, Karla, in our profession, I know other professions too, firm culture is a huge topic. And it's sometimes it feels like, well, how do you define firm culture? Maybe it's somewhere in the ether out here, but are there some concrete things? Like, where do I go for my checklist of firm culture and mental health and well-being programs that we can put into place, right? I haven't seen one. Contacting experts at a firm like yours, I think, is a great first stop. Maybe one or two examples of innovative team health examples that you've seen some clients kind of implement, and have you seen any really great, maybe even new best practices during an all virtual environment that we're in right now?
Yeah, so one example is doing even just coffee chats. And so what I've seen clients do, and actually we did this at MMA as well, is you connect employees through virtual coffee chats. And so maybe it's members of your team, maybe you have individuals who you don't always work with, but assigning somebody almost like a buddy or somebody to check in. And so over coffee, you just virtually dial in, you connect in, and it's not always necessarily talking about work, but just talking about how things are going, just giving that chance to connect with somebody and feel like you're still in the office and having that opportunity to talk with somebody. So coffee chats are a great thing to do. And that can also be done with leaders as well. You can schedule time to have a coffee chat or a coffee break with your employees. And that's just a great opportunity to check in on a one-to-one basis to see how things are going. And again, not necessarily focusing on the actual work that has to happen, but how they're managing their work and how they're doing from a mental health perspective as well. So I think that was a really great idea that could be implemented pretty easily in a virtual environment.
That's great. Thanks, Karla. Anything else on kind of the tips or techniques, that maybe managers or firm or company leaders, even the C-suite professionals would really want to take into consideration here with this topic, and especially during these times? And I know that, the idea of checking in, I think, is so super important. We've heard, a lot about that from our firms and companies, and I think, really great firm cultures and business cultures, that's what's going on right there. Mm-hmm. Are there other programs or maybe initiatives that I, as a business owner, may look at to implement?
And I can add just a little bit more too. When we start talking about mental health, one of the big challenges that we have is, there's still a lot of stigma that's associated with mental health. And so individuals don't always feel comfortable, talking about any challenges that they might be having when it's related to mental health. If we have a physical issue, most people are recognized, oh, you break a bone, you go get treatment. But if somebody's struggling with anxiety or they're struggling with some sort of mental health challenge, they don't always necessarily reach out. And stigma is one of those reasons. So one of the things that you can also do is really focus on maybe creating an anti-stigma campaign, and making sure that people are aware that this is prevalent and it's okay to talk about it, right? So making people feel comfortable reaching out for help if they need it. So that can be one strategy. Going back to leaders, again, modeling behavior that you want to see employees have. And so when we talk about self-care, we talk about, taking vacation time. You can be, as a leader, the person that can model that, encouraging employees to do it. So maybe at a meeting, it's checking in to say, talk about something that you did for yourself from a self-care perspective, but being that role model to encourage employees to also participate in that behavior that you want them to see. And it also almost gives them permission to make sure that they are taking time for themselves if they're seeing you as a leader, take part in that type of practice. And I think just being, honest during this time period and recognizing that this is a tough time, right? So being transparent, giving people grace during this time just to recognize that, you're going to have a lot of emotions, you're going to have a lot of changes you're dealing with, but just allowing them kind of that grace to feel those emotions and being honest and transparent when it comes to any type of things that are happening within the firm in terms of how you're managing COVID. So those are a few. And I know, Diane, you may have a few other ideas or suggestions as well.
Yeah, I think just kind of piggybacking on that, decreasing the stigma in the workplace, to make sure and start to use that person first language in the workplace. So an example of that would be, Andrew, if you had a broken arm, I wouldn't call you, hey, broken arm. I call you Andrew with a broken arm. So the same thing with individuals who may be having some other mental health issues. So it's a person with depression or a person with anxiety. And just like you're not calling someone a schizophrenic, it's a person that has schizophrenia. So those are important different changes in our lexicon that we're not used to. A couple other ones are regarding suicide. So instead of saying committed suicide, that a person died by suicide. So again, we're just trying to change the language. Oftentimes we use negative terms. So if you broke your arm, I wouldn't call you clumsy, right? You're still Andrew with a broken arm. So making sure we're not using derogatory statements to individuals who do have a mental health condition such as depression or an anxiety disorder. So because what it can do is it just kind of puts up more barriers and decreases the likelihood that that individual may receive help. And one of the things that Karla and I talk about in our mental health first aid classes is that individuals with anxiety disorders may take between 3 and 30 years before they seek treatment. And a lot of it probably has to do with stigma that they have experienced. So a workplace is a great place to start practicing that person first language, to make sure that, as Karla mentioned, opening up that conversation and talking about it. I think that's an awesome recommendations.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's across professions, we don't all use the same language. We've had that conversation multiple times with our friends over in like computer information systems and with our lawyer friends and those types of things, and in the business community. But it's a great point, I think, and well taken. Maybe let's all pause and as we are having these maybe broader community-based conversations, let's all keep that in mind and talk about things in those positive ways. Maybe one last question for you both, and I know we're our Mrs. Producers sharing that we're wrapping things up, which is fantastic. Thank you. But as we're hearing, and part of what advocacy organizations like the Society here, things we do is we do gather a variety of member groups and types together for community meetings. We've seen these conversations kind of organically happening at the beginning and the end of almost business conversations. And I think that the more that we can have these more kind of extended conversations, hopefully gives folks more license and makes feel more comfortable to have them and to continue to have them. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but that some things that we've noticed here, at least for member groups wanting to have these conversations.
I thought it was great. I mean, Karla and I were really excited that you are opening this conversation up today. And I know that Karla's presentation earlier that she had made, that a lot of individuals really resonated with them. It was a little bit, it had to do with remembering about themselves and making sure they're taking care of themselves and how everything is affecting them. So I just really applaud you all for having the conversation today.
Well, thank you very much. I did want to ask, is there something else that you've been been burning to that topic we haven't covered yet that you said, Andrew, we have to, before we say goodbye and thank you, we have to cover this. What are we missing today?
I don't know that we're missing anything. I think it's just important again, and I think we've reinforced this throughout the talk today, is just, we are going through a time that's really unprecedented. When it comes to mental health, it is so important to take care of yourself. And, don't be ashamed to pause and take care of yourself first. And I think that if anything, we just want people to feel comfortable doing that. And just recognizing that you do need to give yourself some grace during this time. You know, you may feel a whole wide range of emotions, and individuals who are the most resilient, even they are going to struggle at times. And so it's okay, you know, just pause. And if you need to reach out and talk to somebody, reach out to those strong support systems that you have, and just be comfortable with reaching out and seeking help. So I think it's just, I just want to relay the message, make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and it's okay to do so.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of grab onto that too, in that it is self-care. So sometimes we kind of wait, like, oh, my, you know, so-and-so hasn't contacted me. My colleagues aren't letting, you know, contacting me. It's been a month. Well, it's self-care. So you reach out to them, you know, don't wait for someone to reach out to you. Take that initiative. If that's what you need to feel that connection, then do it yourself too. Yeah.
Well, Diane, Karla, thank you so much for joining us on Bar Talk for this episode. It's been a great conversation. I did want to share that the Society and you all have been a part of this program. We've got, you know, a dedicated landing page to this topic, and it really has come to the forefront in many ways of a lot of the conversations that, especially over the last 5 months or so with the pandemic that we're in, that we're all really engaged in. So I'd like to say thank you so much. Keep up the great job. And you're a friend of the show. You're welcome back on anytime, and I'm sure we'll see you all soon.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Please comment below if there are topics you would like to see us cover, and make sure to subscribe.